My mother grows her own tomatoes, and there's patience that needs to be exercised there. A season of growth where it may have already budded, or like there's a tomato on the vine, but that tomato is not yet ripe. It's not ready. And being able to appreciate when it is ripe, I'm going to start using that analogy with some of my clients. You were patient, you waited, and now it's the season of these things are ripe. Now you get to enjoy it. Now you get to take that trip. Give yourself permission to enjoy the fruit of your labor.
Welcome to the Christ-Centered Stewardship Podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino Villa. Christ-Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Maria. When we repeat things over and over, we can form scripts. And just before we hit record, you and I were talking about if there's something that either you or I, and in this case, I, say repeatedly on this podcast, we could be contributing to a script in somebody else's mind unintentionally. And I just thought, what an interesting conversation to get us started about, right, like if you are listening to us or any other podcast out there and you hear the same thing over and over and over, it is going to establish a belief in your mind and in your spirit. And those beliefs drive your behaviors. And so be careful what you let in, even if it's Nino trying to be encouraging.
That's what I love about you, Nino, is that you're able to hear feedback and switch. So I really appreciate that.
Pivot.
Yep.
Pivot. Do you get the reference?
No.
You're not a Friends
the pivot,
fan?
like with the couch. Yes. It was the tone that you used and the cadence that I didn't recognize. But yes, I know the couch going down the stairwell. That reference.
All right. So we are going to pivot.
Okay. All right. Do you want to share what it was that you were going to script in for people, or would you prefer not?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can, and so be careful, right? If you've been listening the last few weeks, we've been just talking about how people can respond when the economy gets tight. Well, if I opened up again today talking about, well, when the economy's tight, you're going to start to play this script that, like, things are tight, and when things are tight, this is how I need to respond. And that would have been completely unintentional. So I don't want you to be in the mindset thinking, oh, this only applies when the economy's tight. It's hey, no, let's look at how to steward our finances well, regardless of what's going on. And it doesn't, the way we feel about today's topic is how we feel about like savings and the progress we're making with savings sometimes. Well, sure, that can be amplified when the economy's tight, but it's not only ever when the economy's tight that we feel like maybe we're just not where we want to be savings-wise, or things seem to be coming up. So yeah, that's what it was.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the pivot. I appreciate that. And so do our listeners, I'm sure.
So that is a trend that we are seeing, whether it's on our Facebook group or even with some of our clients. This trend that we're seeing is there seems to be a sense of I'm not making the progress with my savings that I want to, and so maybe some discouragement starts to settle in, and savings feels like it's becoming pointless and maybe even fruitless.
Yeah, like it's not working.
It's
And
not
that's one of
working.
the things I hear people say, this isn't working. They get very discouraged when here's what's funny. They say it's not working. They also get discouraged when, they build up their savings and then something needs to be done with that savings. And it's like, well, how can those two things be true at the same time? How can it not be working and yet you have the money for the thing that you needed and have that be at the same time? So I think what this creates is a need for a change in thinking and how we look at something, just kind of changing our perspective a little bit, when I look at savings, we're dealing with car issues right now. So this is just very raw for us. We will have savings built up and then, we have an older car and something needs to be done on the car. And you hear the number like, oh, it's going to be $300. It's going to be $2,000. And your heart sinks a little bit. You're like, oh man, like that money was just sitting there for what? For peace of mind. Okay. So now we have to use it for a car. Well, that's not what I wanted it for. It was for peace of mind. And it's like, okay, but that's kind of the point. Like you have peace of mind now because you have the money for the car repair that is necessary. If you look back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in some cases, 3 months ago, when you didn't have the funds in order to cover that car repair, it wasn't going to change the fact that the car needed to be repaired. It would have just looked like a very different scenario when you're trying to scramble, how do I find that $2,000 in order to fix this car?
So dismantling this idea that quote, it's not working. That's one of those scripts. We play it over and over again in our head. We start to believe it.
Yeah.
And it's going to take us off task. But to your point, the evidence shows that it is working.
Yeah.
That you had the money to do the thing to continue to give you peace of mind. You were able to cash flow it. And I'm seeing this with our clients a lot lately, where there was savings goals to do very specific things. So beyond peace of mind, whether it's travel, saving up for a big purchase, whatever that is, and then it's time to go into the savings account and pull that money out. And there is like a little ouchy moment. There is this, even though that's exactly what it was there for, there's a little ouchy moment where all of a sudden I'm transferring from savings to checking so that I can spend that $2,000 that was saved or that $5,000 that was saved. And so it is working because you had the money to do the thing that you said you wanted to do. And so I think it's more about managing that ouchy moment. Yeah. How do we reduce whatever that feeling is?
And we will get to that, how to manage it and how to reduce them. As you were talking, the very thing that came to mind for me was property taxes. And I think it came to mind because for a while, we don't have escrow. We do have a mortgage, just full transparency. We have a mortgage, but we have taken our escrow back from the bank. And so we pay our own property taxes, we pay our own insurance. And the way in Arizona that the property taxes work is that you have two payments. It's due once a year, but they let you break it up into two different payments. And I believe the first one is, say, around November, and then the second one is around March or something like that. So it's not a full 6 months, but it's, spread out. So anyway, in the past, I would always just kind of wait for that ouchie moment and just figure it out. Like, I don't know where we're going to get this $1,900, and then we'd figure it out. Well, more recently, I have set up where $300 every single month gets pulled from our cash flow and put into savings specifically for our property taxes. And I can tell you that that ouchie moment for us has now shifted from 1 time or 2 times a year to 12 times a year, because now I'm seeing it every single month come out of our account. So it feels in the moment, like, oh, we don't have the extra $300 to play with or to do other things with. And at the same time, I know that when that $1,800 to $1,900 bill comes, it will feel a lot less stressful because I'll know exactly where that money is. And yet it will still have an ouchie moment because now I'm taking it out of savings, to your point. I'm giving it to somebody else. But if I keep in mind that that was the purpose for that savings account from the get-go, then it makes it a little bit more bearable when it actually has to be drained.
I can't help but think about giving yourself permission. Part of how to negate that ouchie moment is give yourself permission. Be grateful that, so in your case, be grateful that at the end, when you have to pay the $1,800 to $1,900, that it's just already taken care of. So there's a gratitude moment, but also I'm thinking about clients who have been traveling or making big purchases and they still feel that ouchie moment. And it's like, well, give yourself permission, because this is exactly why you were storing some money away each and every month, so that you could do this, you could cash flow it, you weren't going into debt for it. So gratitude and permission.
Yeah, I agree. I think also we need to think about what is savings doing for us, right? Like it's basically, it's buying us time, sort of, for something else, but it feels weird because we're wanting to be gratified. We want the instant gratification. I mean, we live in a microwave society where, you can look something up, and especially with AI these days, like you can have a curriculum created in like 48 seconds. It's ridiculous what can happen in the span of a minute. And yet we are called to have some of that delayed gratification. And I think savings kind of, it hones that for us. It becomes that thing that sort of lets us know, okay, it's calm down. Like it's okay to wait. And normally good things come when we wait. And that's just not a platitude. It's like we have to wait for the things to become good. And I think that's kind of what savings says to me, is that, this is something that if you are intentional, it's not fast. It's going to almost force that spirit, of ours that wants something, but it's like we know there's something greater for those who are willing to wait for that, and it's just practice for us.
Now I'm thinking about how so many of my family members are like grow gardens and whatnot. So like my mother grows her own tomatoes, and there's patience that needs to be exercised there, and there's a season of growth where hey, it may have already budded, or like there's a tomato on the vine, but that tomato is not yet ripe. It's not ready. And being able to appreciate when it is ripe, right? When those tomatoes are ripe, and then she's harvesting them and canning them, they are fantastic. But she had to be patient and wait. And I think I'm going to start using that analogy with some of my clients. Like, you were patient, you waited, and now it's the season of these things are ripe. And now you get to enjoy it. Now you get to take that trip, right? That's that permission part again. Like, give yourself permission to enjoy the fruit of your labor. And that, like you said, we are in a microwave society. That is just not something that we're reminded of and that we practice often.
Right. And just to, double down on your analogy, I've seen tomatoes. I've seen how much fruit is produced. And I can tell you there are times when there is no way that you are able to can and consume all of that which was given to you. And so I think you can take that analogy and take it even further and just say, when you are creating that abundance, this is when you're able to go and share that with other people. I mean, how many times do you have, my neighbor the other day, I have too many tomatoes. Would you like some tomatoes? And it was just a beautiful, gesture of neighborliness. And I was able to enjoy the fruits of her labor. And so I'm not saying that I went to her house to take her tomatoes from her, but she was able to give them to us to share. And so I think oftentimes when we think about savings, there really is that compounding effect that takes place, Nino. The problem is because we're so impatient, we oftentimes cut that compounding effect short. And we take the money out, and then it has to start all over. So the money that, if we are patient enough, that we allow to actually just build up time over time over time, that compounding effect will create such an abundance of fruit for us that we'll almost have to be able to share that. And that can be sharing it with other neighbors. It can be sharing it with people in the community, like we mentioned before. It could be passing some of that along to our own children and generations beyond. But it does eventually produce more than we're ever actually able to use.
It is amazing to me what the Holy Spirit is doing with this analogy right now. Because the other thing I'm thinking about as you're sharing that is sometimes when we do have an abundance of fruit, all of a sudden we see that as the new minimum. So let's just take this to dollars and cents in a savings account. Maybe you've said that your savings goal is $10,000. So you get to $10,000. Now you see it get up to like 12 or 15. And maybe that other $2,000 to $5,000 was already earmarked for something. But now that you saw the 15,000 in your account, you're like, but now I want that to be the new minimum. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think about the biblical story about the foolishness of the man who said, I'm going to build myself bigger storehouses. Mm-hmm. Because to your point, you can't even consume it all. And even if you did store it, in the analogy of tomatoes, right? Those tomatoes eventually are going to go bad and you're not going to be able to consume them. Now, I get it. It's not exactly the same with money, but money can do the same thing to our spirit. It can ruin our spirit. Our spirit can start to rely more on the money than the money giver. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't help it. It's happening in my own spirit, and I want to share it, but I can't necessarily articulate every nuance of it. But that's what's going on.
Yeah, well, and, at the risk of beating a dead horse, money can go bad. And that's really what inflation does. It eats up at the usefulness of that money. And so, that $10 that you're going to have today will not be as effective or efficient in 10 years from now. And so there is that sense of it sort of rotting away and, not becoming good anymore. So that's where I think it becomes very important to be intentional with what are you going to do with those $10 now. Don't hang on to it out of fear of something else, right? Just if there's something like a vacation or a car repair or something that, or property taxes, that right now this is what this money is intended for. If you just hang on to it for no other reason than just to hoard it, it's not going to be that useful later on anyway. And so that's the other piece of it. Now, I know that sounds like a contradiction to what I said before about being able to, have that compounding effect. But I think that this is where two things can be true at one time. There's purpose for money. And so if you have the purpose of letting that build up for way in the future in the storehouse, that's okay. But also you can't, like you said, can't take it with you when you go. I mean, that gentleman that you just mentioned in the Bible, he died that next night. Or even that night. And so we can't just, we use money. It's a tool. We need to use it for that which it is intended and recognize that there are different uses for it. But just hanging on to, like you said, the tomatoes, you can consume the tomatoes that are to be used now. But if you try to hang on to them forever and ever, they will go bad, as will your dollar.
It seems as though we may have gone full circle, because then you could almost ask the question, well, then isn't savings pointless, which is kind of where we started. And to your point, no. Two things can be true that sound contradictory, but they're actually complementary. And that is, it's actually going to become our challenge for the week, and that is to steward your money so well that it becomes investments. Meaning, if we go back to the tomato analogy, if I have too many tomatoes that I can't consume them all, I can make an investment into somebody else and be a blessing to somebody else. But also tomatoes grow more seeds, and those seeds, when planted again, will give you another harvest. And so there's this continuation of this like life cycle. And so that's the challenge, is to start thinking about these things differently and think about how you're going to invest in yourself, in others, and into the future.
Love that. Absolutely. Challenge accepted, sir.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ-Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.